Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 2019 comedy Jexi. Now, Jexi is a film that I was honestly interested in by the concept and the fact that Rose Byrne was the voice of this smartphone from hell. And I really like her. I've been a fan of hers ever since I saw her work in the film Neighbors, and I thought her deadpan in the trailers was hilarious. And I like the idea of a smartphone that goes haywire and gets jealous and is swearing and just being a complete, total, crass pain in the ass. I thought that was a fun idea. I'm not a super big fan of Adam DeVine, and so that him being the lead really was the main reason why I didn't really want to see this in the theater. Also, I was worried that this was going to be one of those movies that was just going to be one giant overlong sketch that you would see on like Saturday Night Live or other sketch comedies. So I was understandably leery of that being the case. That they're just going to run this one joke into the ground. And that's all the movie's going to be. And uh, late one night, I had the opportunity to check it out, and so I decided to give it a watch. And ultimately, I thought it was an all right movie. This is a film that I know has been absolutely just destroyed by critics. It gets scathing reviews. There are people calling it like one of the worst films of 2019, and so on and so forth, and people just questioning whether or not it has any merit at all. And I think those reviews and those takes are a bit extreme myself, but hey, teach their own. You know, but it's one of those things that I definitely didn't see it to be nearly as bad as a lot of the critics did. I wouldn't call this a great film, but I laughed more than a few times, which is more than I can say for a large number of comedies that have come out in the past few years. I mean, I wouldn't say this is on the level of Dolomite Is My Name from 2019, but it's definitely better than Good Boys or any of the other comedies that I had personally witnessed from 2019. Uh, I thought for a $5 million low budget film, I thought that, you know, there was a lot to like about it, despite the fact that ultimately it was a pretty predictable, generic rom com at the center of everything. But there was some really genuinely hilarious, raunchy bits of humor. There was some genuinely charming performances by some of the cast, and despite the fact that, you know, there's this cliched rom-com that's really the center of this story, I thought it was sweet. In particular, I thought the whole romance between Adam Devine's character Phil and Alexandra Shipp's character Kate, I thought was sweet, and I thought it was charming, and I thought they made a good couple, and uh, there was chemistry between the two, and I definitely wanted them to find a way to make things work and, you know, live happily ever after, and so on and so forth. So it's one of those things where it's a film that I wouldn't call a masterpiece. I wouldn't say it's a great movie. Ultimately, it's just one of those mediocre, average comedies uh, that could have been more if there was a little bit more originality in the overall plot line. I mean, other than the sentient, raunchy phone, uh, the other aspects of the story are very stock and generic. I would say the film Electric Dreams from the 80s definitely took this concept and made something more unique with it, but this still had some interesting bits of commentary about addiction to technology and cell phones in general. although it didn't really say anything particularly new, but it still reiterated some things that I feel are definitely quite relevant today. And I think it also helped that it's only like 84 minutes. This movie is a quite short film in terms of its running time, and that's with the end credits. Without the end credits, it's like 80 minutes or something. So it goes by at a pretty brisk pace, and there's enough there in the plot and with the characters that it keeps you interested. Although there were some moments where it kind of drifts off a little bit and you drift off with it, but because your interest definitely fades in and out. It's almost like when you take your cell phone and you go into an area where there's bad cell phone service and it becomes spotty. That's kind of how this film is at times. The quality definitely becomes spotty, like a bad Wi-Fi signal. It's directed by John Lucas and Scott Moore, and for a low-budget film, about $5 million, I thought it had a good amount of style and flair to it. Uh, I didn't think that it looked particularly that cheap. And the script by John Lucas and Scott Moore, I thought it had some really clever bits of humor, and also some nice bits of humanity amidst all of the humor. Like I said earlier, I felt the relationship, the romance angle, despite how stock and cliched the overall plotline was, I thought it still was effective because of the two actors who were portraying these characters. And I think they were able to do as well as they did because of the script. The script gave them a lot to work with, a lot to really bring these characters to life and to make them as endearing as they are. But I would say definitely the biggest standout aspects of the script is with the witty moments with the phone. I mean, the phone orgasm, like that was it's raunchy, but it's effective in terms of its humor. And Rose Byrne is she's just great with her burns in this movie. I love her deadpan narration as Jexi. It's a really good performance by her because it sounds believably robotic, but at the same time still has this energy to it that really adds to the humor, because they could have easily just had it just be some text to speech thing, but they had a real actress and a real human being play this role instead of the other option, and I definitely feel this film definitely benefited from that. And there's some good performance of good acting by some of the other members in the cast. I mean, Michael Pena as Adam DeVine's boss, and also ultimately at the core of the film, this rom-com story, but at the core of that particular story is a warm heart. It's got a good heart to it. It's one of those movies where it does make you feel good. It's got a good message. Even as cliched as the message is, it's still a good message about breaking free of restraints, whether it be the restraints that you have to your phone or to other aspects of your life. It's about, taking these chances, taking these risks, and doing new things, and being rewarded for that risk that you take, for breaking out of your comfort zone. And that's, I mean, yeah, it's a cliche, but it's something that a lot of people can relate to, myself, and probably a lot of you. And it's one of those things where, despite how cliched it is, it's still an effective message to convey. And I feel the film does a pretty good job doing that. And I would say, out of the films that I've seen starring Adam DeVine, I would say this is my favorite film that I've seen him in, because the character he plays here, he's a lovable loser. Like, he's a guy that you want to see succeed. He's not an asshole. he's not an unlikable douchebag like his characters in some of his other works, like Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates or some of these other films that he's done. So it was a nice change of pace for me personally to see him play this character that is actually likable, who's not some obnoxious douchebag. So, the obnoxious douchebags in this film are people like Wanda Sykes or Michael Pena's character, which that's nothing new for Wanda Sykes. Excuse me, but Michael Pena, like normally he plays like the type of character that Adam DeVine played in this movie, but in this he's just a total jerk. Like he's just this really, I'm trying to think of the right word. He's definitely narcissistic. He's this incredibly narcissistic, delusional boss at this essentially a BuzzFeed clone, and he thinks he's this really big deal, and he's this boss of this website that makes viral top 10 lists. You know, that's the whole thing. It's about making these useless wastes of internet space, and that's his claim to fame. But Michael Pena, he definitely took the ball and ran with it with that role. I think he relished the opportunity to go against type and to play, a just a total jerk off, a narcissistic jerk who isn't really likable. It's not one of those characters that he's played in other films where, you know, he's like Adam Devine, the lovable loser. And if you're a fan of hip hop or rap, Kid Cudi, he has a bit role in this, and there's a whole plot point that ties around Kid Cudi concert. There's some references in this that really spoke to me. Like this film has references to Days of Thunder. Like that's a whole repeated reference throughout the movie, and it's all about how much Adam Devine he loves the movie and how he meets these other friends that also love the film, and Kid Cudi even loves Days of Thunder. And so as a fan of Days of Thunder, it was honestly really cool to see all these Days of Thunder references, because you really don't see a lot of that, and you really don't, and it didn't come across as a joke to me. It came across as like a respectful homage. Like it was one of those things where I think it was intended to be maybe like it's just a joke, but the way that it was portrayed in the film, it came across as sincere. And as a fan of Days of Thunder, it was like, yeah, cool, awesome. I'm totally all about these references here. Um, and you know, it's one of those movies that I definitely wouldn't recommend paying a whole lot of money to see. I would say the trailer doesn't interest you, I would probably recommend skipping it. But if it looked like it might be worth a watch to you, or you like the idea behind it, I definitely do recommend watching it at least once, because I think there is a good amount of stuff here that's going to be worth your while. It's, not everything's going to be worth your while. Like I said, it's got spotty quality, and some jokes fall flatter than others, and some of the other aspects of the plot are not that strong. But it's still a decent movie. It's still an alright piece of entertainment, and it's not completely without its merits, and it's not a complete and total waste of time. And there are a lot of modern comedies out there that really don't have nearly as many laughs as this film did, or have as charming of a tone as this film does as well. It's one of those movies where, in some aspects, it kind of feels like a throwback. And I know some people have said that it feels like it's a dated movie because of that. But in terms of its storytelling, in terms of its overall tone, I think it harkening back to some of the 2000s or '90s kind of storytelling. I don't really think that's a problem. I think that's actually a benefit to the film. Despite the raunchiness of the movie, it balances out the raunchiness with a genuinely charming uh, romance. And even though it's cliched and it's fairly predictable, the characters and the actors they make it work despite all that. And then you got the craziness of Jexi, jealous Jexi, uh, amping things up to a whole other notch. So yeah, I like the film. I like Jexi. I didn't love it. It's ultimately a time waster for me. And like I've said numerous times in this video, it's ultimately at best an average film. But that's better than what I thought. I thought this was going to be honestly pretty bad because I wasn't a big fan of Adam DeVine, and I was worried that there's just going to be one long SNL sketch that stretched out way too thin, and I don't really think that was the case. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about Jexi except if I were to rate out of 5 stars, um, I would give the film 3 out of 5 stars for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And in case anyone's wondering, like, about my opinions on any of the other aspects of the production, I mean, like the music, there really isn't much. It's not really that memorable. It's very stock. Cinematography, it looks okay, I guess, and the editing is once again okay. So nothing from the technical standpoint is really particularly amazing. It's also spotty, but it's good enough. It's good enough for a $5 million comedy that got a limited theatrical release and is more of a it's more at home in a streaming environment, so to speak, as like a Netflix movie or something like that. It's if you got your friends over, if you got a date over, like there's worse ways to spend your time than with Jexi. So and thankfully, like I said, it's a fairly short film. So even if you're not a fan of it and you're not that into it, it's not really going to take a whole lot of time out of your day. So yeah. So that's my review of Jexi, and as always, I will see you later. See ya.